Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Okay.
We like to take a closer look at the stuff that's really making waves, and today we're diving into something that's got the whole tech world buzzing: iPhone production cuts.
Yeah, these cuts are a pretty big deal, especially coming from Apple, a company that's practically synonymous with growth and innovation.
Exactly, and to really get to the bottom of this, we've got some fascinating insights from none other than Ming-Chi Kuo.
Oh yeah, Kuo, he's like the oracle of Apple analysts. He's got this incredible track record for predicting what Apple's going to do.
Right, and he's saying that Apple's slashing iPhone 16 orders by about 10 million units,
Mm-hmm.
mostly the non-Pro models.
Wow, 10 million. That's a pretty substantial chunk of phones.
Yeah, it is. And it brings their total production for the second half of 2024 down to around 84 million iPhones, significantly lower than what everyone was expecting.
So that begs the question why the sudden slowdown. Is demand weaker than Apple anticipated? Are people holding onto their phones for longer?
Well, Kuz seems to think so. His analysis is pointing to some pretty interesting trends for the coming quarters. He's forecasting around 80 million units for the fourth quarter of 2024, but then it dips to 45 million in the first quarter of 2025, and even further down to 39 million in the second quarter of 2025.
Those are some pretty steep drops, especially compared to the same time last year.
Yeah, and it's got everyone wondering what this means for Apple's revenue.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a company that's known for consistent growth.
Right. Well, it's not necessarily all doom and gloom just yet. Kuo believes Apple's fourth quarter revenue might not be too badly hit. The holiday season always brings a surge in iPhone sales.
True, especially with those higher-priced Pro Max models likely being front and center in all the holiday promotions.
Exactly. People are more willing to splurge during the holidays, and a shiny new iPhone is always a hot ticket item.
Yeah, but it sounds like the first half of 2025 is where things could get a bit dicey.
Yeah, that's when those lower production numbers combined with that potential shift in sales, fewer people opting for the standard models, could really start to put a dent in Apple's overall revenue.
So it's like this perfect storm brewing.
You could say that it'll be fascinating to see how Apple navigates this. They're a company that's known for adapting and innovating.
And that's a good point. They've weathered storms before and come out on top. I guess the big question now is how will these production cuts and the shifting market dynamics impact Apple's bottom line?
Well, to really understand that, we need to break down the potential revenue impact a little further.
Okay, so what are the key factors at play here?
Well, one of the biggest things we got to think about is Apple's average selling price. Like, if fewer people are buying those standard iPhones and more are going for the Pro models, that could actually boost their revenue in the short term.
Oh, so even though they're selling fewer phones overall, they could still make more money because the Pro models are more expensive.
Exactly. It's all about that sales mix. But the big question is, will that shift to the Pro models be enough to totally make up for the drop in overall units sold? It's kind of a tightrope walk.
Yeah, and then you've got the whole economic climate to consider too, with inflation and everything. People might be hesitant to drop a ton of cash on a new phone.
Oh, for sure. Consumer confidence is huge, especially when it comes to big purchases like smartphones. If people are worried about the economy, they might wait to upgrade or choose a cheaper model.
Right. It's like this whole mix of things: consumer behavior, the economy, and maybe even Apple's own product strategy.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. They might be intentionally focusing on those higher margin products, even if it means selling a few less phones overall. It's a classic Apple move. They're all about that strategic approach.
It's interesting how all these pieces fit together. It's not just about how many iPhones they're making. It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the competition.
Yeah.
The smartphone market is brutal, with new companies popping up all the time, and everyone's constantly trying to one-up each other.
So Apple can't just rest on their laurels. They have to keep innovating and stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. They got to keep coming up with those must-have features that make people want to shell out the big bucks, especially now that everyone's more price conscious.
It really shows you how complex the tech world is. So many factors can make or break a company, even one as big as Apple.
It's this constant dance of adapting and innovating. The companies that can anticipate and respond to those changes are the ones that survive and thrive.
So true, and that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating. So for our listeners tuning in today, what are some of the key takeaways from all this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that those iPhone production cuts, they're a sign that the smartphone market is changing, and even Apple isn't immune to those changes. And the second thing is that how this all shakes out for Apple's revenue, Well, that depends on a whole bunch of stuff, like what consumers are doing, how the economy is doing, and what moves Apple makes. And lastly, I think it's a reminder that even the biggest, most successful companies have to be flexible and adaptable if they want to stay on top.
That's a fantastic summary. You've given us a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And to everyone listening out there, we hope you found this exploration insightful and thought-provoking. Understanding these trends is super valuable, especially as the world of tech keeps evolving. We'll catch you on our next deep dive.
It really makes you think, huh? And, Kuo specifically mentioned those production cuts are mainly hitting those non-pro models.
Right.
Does that tell us anything about what's happening with consumers?
That's a great point, and it does seem like maybe people are getting more picky about what they want in a smartphone, like they're willing to pay more for those higher-end models, even if things are a little tight economically.
So it's not just about being price conscious, it's about getting the best bang for your buck.
Yeah.
People might be holding onto their phones for longer, but when they do upgrade, they're going all out for the pro models with all the fancy features. Exactly. Those pro features might be becoming more and more important to people. Better cameras, faster processors, sleeker designs, and since we're using our phones for pretty much everything these days, those premium features might be worth the extra cost for a lot of folks.
That makes sense. And it kind of ties into Apple's strategy, too. They've been really pushing those pro models, making them stand out from the standard ones.
Definitely. And it'll be interesting to see if they keep going in that direction, making those pro models even more advanced and widening the gap between them and the regular iPhones.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored those iPhone production cuts, what might be driving them, and what it all could mean for Apple's future.
It's a complicated situation for sure, but hopefully this deep dive has given everyone listening a better understanding of what's going on.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, we hope this has been a helpful look at the evolving world of tech. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.